talented in that locker room, but he'll go out as having the best winning percentage of any Buffalo Bills head coach ever, and he'll have plenty of suitors if he wants to remain a head coach in the NFL next year. I believe he does, and it's one of the things I always say. It's like, if you fire a head coach and you got people that are willing to hire him immediately, you maybe didn't need to fire your head coach, or maybe you made a mistake in firing your head coach. But here we are. Expect to see Sean McDermott. It's going to be weird to see Sean McDermott on another sideline next year. But I have to say, and I think a lot of Bills fans should thank the guy for pulling them out of the dark ages. And there's the human element in me feels bad that the guy that helped get them this new stadium, partially helped get them this new stadium, is never going to coach a game for the Buffalo Bills in this new stadium.
Yeah, he got to the postseason with Tyrod as his quarterback. So certainly, and he is part of helping to develop Josh Allen for sure. But now that we look back, right, was this really Terry Pegula waking up Sunday and saying, you know what, it's time? Well, maybe. But I would just kind of say, go back to the post-game comments from Josh Allen. Have you ever seen Josh Allen after a game like that cry? How many quarterbacks do you see cry? Look, he was bad. That was not by his standards, certainly. 5 turnovers. I have only been in 2 Bills locker rooms when the season ends in terms of this era. That was the 2 home games, one being the Kansas City loss in the divisional round a couple of years ago, and then the Cincinnati loss. Danger, there wasn't anything close. To every reporter going in there saying, boy, this feels different. Did the players know? Did they know something was up? And then when you go back even further, and we pointed this out, hey, maybe there isn't, maybe everything between Bean McDermott isn't right. When Sean McDermott goes way out of his way leading up to Jacksonville to pump the tires and just make a comment that, boy, that would be really nice to have a receiver like Jacoby Myers. Reportedly, according to Tim Graham, was very, very hot when the team lost Jamarcus Ingram.
Oh, nice pick, by the way, over the weekend.
I know. It's like the couple that, hey, they're getting divorced. I thought they were happy. Look at all the – well, you don't know really what's going on. These were 2 individuals, by the way, too, that we were all told that they were in lockstep. Well, maybe that was 8 years ago. Things change over 8 years. And both guys actually reported to the owner. Separately.
Yeah, it's a organizational workflow that I think a lot of general managers would have a hard time with. That a GM would probably typically say, head coach reports to GM reports to owner. Or in this case now, what Terry Pegula has done is actually contradictory to what he's wanted to do with the Sabres all these years, which, we don't need a president of hockey ops. We don't need a now you have a president. Not only does Bean keep his job, he gets promoted.
He gets
promoted.
They're putting out that SE wide receiving core and all the missteps on this roster.
Yeah.
That's the shocking thing. He gets promoted. So does this mean then at some point we'll have like Terrence Gray as your new GM
I think
working?
All that matters in the world of Terry Pegula is that he is heard. He just wants to be heard. And as he gets older and, as he's, that stadium's going to open up and it's going to be like the crowning achievement of his life, right? This is such a monumental day for this organization and for the Pegula family and for Western New York. And his name is all over. He's going to want to sit back, enjoy the fruits of that labor. And a guy like Brandon Beane will tell him what he wants to know, tell him how he wants to hear it. He is tight. He and Gwelly are tight with Pegula. McDermott finds himself now as the outsider.
Well, they're tight, but does McDermott have the business chops of those other two?
No. He's a football guy.
He's a football guy. And the parallel being, oh, my gosh, the Sabres, like Kevin Adams, smart business guy. Like a salesman can, call out the objection, name it, empathize, redirect, move on. Basically, if Terry Pegula's coming in hot, I'm sure Brandon Beane has the skill set to kind of do that. And if Terry Pegula is hearing it from one guy or the other, and this is just me speculating about differences in the roster, or differences in philosophy, or whatever it is, these two can't get along. I just didn't think Danger, I'm going to say it. I think they picked the wrong guy.
Well, I don't like the half measure. I think if you were going to do this, they came in together, you get rid of them together. But I don't think Terry Pegula has the stones to do something like that. And if he were to do something like that, it would certainly take a lot longer than it has. And if it's been brewing for a couple of years, we've seen with the Sabres that he will let things fester and fester and fester until you can't go back or until he has a better option. The other thing that to watch for, and I think this is something that you'll hear the next time we hear Brandon Beane speak. I mean, I hope that he gets challenged about the wide receivers. First and foremost, I hope somebody in Buffalo sports media challenges Brandon Beane on the roster, on the wide receivers. And I think the thing that you're going to hear a steady dose of is just how much weight Sean McDermott had in helping build this roster.
Well,
the blame deflection will go back on the guy that's no longer here. And there's one player that I have in my mind that I think is the perfect example as to how this maybe started to separate a little bit between these two, and it's Diggs. It's Diggs. And Gino, credit where due, the executive producer said this after week 5. And when you say this to a Bills fan, they go white in the face.
Oh, my gosh. She was way ahead of the curve. If you're new to the show, that being my wife, because I go home, I get a scorecard, and she's got takes. And she said this back in October. Diggs is going to get to a Super Bowl for Allen. Are you prepared for that? So when you couple this, Danger, this is one of the darkest weeks in franchise history. Yes, there's a new stadium on the horizon. Yes, you have Josh Allen. You fumbled away another opportunity in the postseason. You have a coach that, by and large, people really like, that you just fired, and you don't know what's around the corner. And then to cap it all off, get ready for Stephon Diggs and the New England Patriots to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl to make my head explode.
But I think about Diggs, and I know it's not fair to say it's just one player that can make or break a franchise, but I think about the seismic shift that this organization took and Josh Allen's development took with Diggs on this roster. I don't think you have Josh Allen today if you don't have Diggs then. And a lot of people say Brian Daboll was a big part of that. I'll listen to that to a point, but I think Diggs still being the guy that he is helped make Allen what many people consider the best football player that is in the NFL right now. And he didn't look like it on Saturday, by the way. He looked incredibly average and very careless.
Yeah, and I don't want to be a Josh Allen apologist, but how hurt was he out there? We'll never know. He hits that pass to Knox, and then, okay, well, that's normally a pass he hit.
Pass to Shakir, right? That's a touchdown.
Okay. Another theory I want to throw out, Danger. If you have players crying in the locker room, do they know? Is there extra weight on them? Because it's one thing, hey, a loss, we'll talk to you next year. Did your check clear? Yeah, so did mine. No. It's different when this isn't going to be the same.
Right. Back to Diggs for a second, though, because I really believe when McDermott said what he said about Diggs not being at OTAs and you had this rift, it was the Cincinnati game where Diggs was being Diggs and nobody really checked him or nobody really managed him through that. And then you had Diggs, you had a head coach lying about Diggs, and Diggs, whatever it was just poorly managed. And that's part of the head coach's job, managing your talent, managing your guys, making sure your guys are in. And Diggs, went from being this, all-in invested guy. And Diggs has character flaws. I'm not saying Diggs is
well, but to summarize,
Beane
just gave him the money.
Beane did everything for Diggs. He gave up a first-round pick for Diggs. For everything that we're saying the Bills needed offensively this year, the Bills had in a guy in Diggs. And I don't think the coach wanted Diggs around anymore, whereas the GM probably said, he's pretty good. He's a pretty good football player. Makes our team better. Are you sure? Because if you're sure, I'll go get something in return. And he did. Beane got something in return for Diggs. Diggs is going to the Super Bowl. Diggs is going to be in the Super Bowl if they beat Denver on Sunday, and that doesn't sit well with me, and I'm sure it doesn't sit well with Brandon Beane.
That's that's a low point, but I'm not gonna like put a halo on Stephon Diggs.
No.
And by the way, like how convenient too, whatever's court they got kicked till after the Super Bowl. So I just want to kind of point that out there that hey, maybe he doesn't fit the McDermott culture because maybe actually Danger, possibly, I don't know. He's not a good guy.
Oh, he's not a good guy, but he'll win you football games. I don't know. I mean,
if we're trying to figure out, all right, where did the relationship go south?
I feel like that's a point.
That's a benchmark. That's a really, really big benchmark. I can't even get to the, hey, is it Clint Kubiak? Should they go after Davis Webb? What about John Gruden? What? I can't even wrap my mind around that. This is the most shocking news ever. Name me something more shocking. Okay, OJ, right? When you first heard him, no, it can't be. No, it's OJ. He wouldn't do that.
Well, I didn't hear anybody that covers this team even suggest remotely that McDermott was any sort of hot water on the hot seat. But the way they lost and losing the way they lost again on Saturday, I also don't hear anybody saying it wasn't time. It was time.
Well, and
it's justified in my opinion.
Did McDermott know the way he calls up Jay Skursky from the plane?
Yep.
How hot he is. And look, we can table the whole, was that a catch? Was it not a catch? I like, to me, it's like, wow, that is so in the rearview mirror now, right? And ultimately, who knows where this team would have ended up anyways. But the point being, that was out of character. And was that a head coach that was just so angry it came down to one play, knowing that one play was going to cost him potentially his job in Buffalo? Did he know after that game it was over? I think so.
I agree.
I think Allen knew. I think Dawkins knew. And none of us picked up on it. Myself included. I wanted Drake C. Toll. Ask me the question. No, he's safe. Are you kidding me?
National radio. Now national radio knows that we in the sports bar, we are frauds.
We are
fraudulent. We don't know anything when it comes to this team because we have an owner who just wants to be heard. I'll say this about McDermott because I caught it right away. I mean, you mentioned it, the post game. It was very out of character. It's one thing to say, we left some plays out on the field, and it's unfortunate that these seasons keep ending this way. We need to be better. We need to improve. We're going to learn from it, blah, blah, blah. It's all the same thing that we've heard year after year after year. But for McDermott to go out of his way and it was almost as if you heard him pandering to the very crowd that has been, screaming for his head after every single loss. That you want this, I'm going to do this for Buffalo. That this Buffalo... I'm going to stand up for Buffalo. Listen to McDermott after the Broncos lost.
It's hard for me to understand why it was ruled the way it was ruled. And if it is ruled that way, then why wasn't it slowed down? Just to make sure that we have this right. That would have made a lot of sense to me, to make sure that we have this thing right, because that's a pivotal play in the game. We have the ball at the 20, maybe kicking a game-winning field goal right there. So I'll just leave it at that. But I'm saying it because I'm standing up for Buffalo, damn it. I'm standing up for us. Because what went on is not how it should go down. In my estimation, that play, these guys spent 3 hours out there playing football, pouring their guts out, to not even say, hey, let's just slow this thing down. That's why I'm bothered.
In your eyes, was it catch down by contact?
In my eyes, it was. Yes, in my eyes, it was. But even if it wasn't, okay, let's just say that, and I'm being objective. Even if it wasn't, the players are owed, to me, let's stop it, let's slow it down, let's put the head referee and give him a chance to look at the monitor just to make sure.
Is he the guy that's on the competition committee moving forward?
Yeah, well, right. I'm like, when he said that, I'm like, oh, okay. And part of that, and he's wrong actually on this. Carl Jeffers, that's not his call, the head referee. It's New York. But then the idea that he gets even more angry about this and has to, get his pound of flesh and call up the Buffalo News from the team plane.
I always call that the language of losers. And when he did that, I thought, this is so out of character, and it's him pandering to the same people that want him to lose his job after every loss. Something felt off about those comments.
Danger, that's the exception to your rule, though. They lost. We lost. Again, like that, okay, you want to be pissed? Be pissed. Like, You went online, and I saw people like writing back at you. People were furious. How is this even possible? And they want to. If you want to direct your anger at Park Avenue for not slowing that down, like he said, absolutely. I think Bills fans have had enough. Name another fan base that has had to go through. Do you want me to rattle everything off between 13 seconds and no goal and wide right? And now we have this goddamn play.
You always say it. You are responsible for the position you are in.
That's correct. And the saying that you've got to play better than the officials officiate. But danger on a game like that, Bills fans have every right to be angry.
No question.
Tim in San Diego, 866-4FN. Hey, Tim.
I'm still trying to process everything.
Yeah.
This is, it's the timing was shocking to me, especially with the stadium, going to be a new stadium opening next year. You thought, okay, like you guys said, there was no inclination that he was in any type of high. I thought it was just going to be another year. And it's just like, okay, here it is, new stadium. Sean McDermott gets to open it up, with the Buffalo Bills 2026. And it's just shocking to me. I mean, it's mind blowing, numbing. It's all that. But, to your point about the rift, that you never really heard about from Bean and McDermott, Bean made a comment on November 5th of last year, said, I think we have a championship team. I know what it takes. I know what it is. And I'm like, and then McDermott didn't say anything, when he was asked that question, do you feel the same way? And, right then and there, and then obviously going back to, what you mentioned with Diggs, and there was definitely something going on. And with Bean's moves, like the desperate moves to get somebody at the wide receiver position to, hopefully save the day, it made me think his job was on the line more than McDermott. But as we found out, looks like Bean's got a little bit of Russ Brandon in him and, went for the power play.
Yeah, Tim, exactly. And a great way to start us off. The wide receiver, like Bean, if he's smart when he does a season ending, you talk about it right off the top. You say you go to the Andy Reid. Here are the things I could do better, and we're going to improve the wide receivers. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. I'm excited about the future. Blah blah blah. We don't have a date or time on Brandon Beane's season-ending press conference that is required for every team by rule. So we will hear from Bean at some point. Jim in Webster, again, our number 585-866-4326. Hey, Jim.
Hey, so one thing you guys haven't touched on, did you guys see Bosa going through the tunnel and slamming his helmet against the wall?
Yeah.
So my thinking is between him and Josh crying and Bosa doing that, I really think they both thought they were going to the Super Bowl, and I think that just killed them. But the other thoughts on some things, does this mean possibly Fisher's out if the next coach doesn't like it?
Oh, well, that's a good point. Well, no, not right away. There's a 3-year deal in place. Wegmans is the new title sponsor. Yeah, Fisher might look a little different because McDermott always liked in the mornings and whatever.
And I'll say this about Bosa. In his defense, he was terrible this postseason. He was invisible. I'd be frustrated too. He sucked. He was worthless.
Is that because they used him a little too much? When they signed him, we all said, this is meant for January. January came around.
With the way they rotate their guys, the way he has always rotated his guys, he missed a couple of games. I'm not buying that. You're a professional athlete. Go out there and perform. And he was invisible in Jacksonville and in Denver. A 0. So I get the frustration. Maybe you did think that this was your chance to get to a Super Bowl, but you didn't do anything to help the team get there. And look, the head coach wasn't good enough. He hasn't been good enough. If you just look at his last 6 playoff trips, his last 6 playoff losses, in those losses, a defensive-minded head coach giving up 33.2 points per game allowed, number 29 in defensive success, number 27 in EPA per play. Unacceptable defense in the biggest moments. We've seen this in the postseason through the McDermott era, and it has finally cost him his job. Fair or unfair, it's a results-driven business, and it finally cost him his job. Josh Allen changes the equation on this. If you don't have Josh Allen, you say, well, you have the best player in the NFL. And so your defense needs to do more. Josh Allen didn't win you the game on Saturday. He may have cost you the game on Saturday, and he would be the first to admit that. But largely speaking, in the postseason, Josh Allen has been incredible. The defense on this team has been what's let this team down.
Not in Denver. 5 turnovers. Off those 5 turnovers, 16 points. And of those 16 points, 3 of them were at Josh Allen. Oh, yeah, drop the ball, 2 seconds to go. Great kick. You didn't even have a chance to defend that. So in the NFL today, well, I look at Denver, even with Bo Nix, that's not the most vaunted offense. No offense. Nix is okay, and he's not going to be available.
Gino, in that same game, by the way, you can say, no, it wasn't their fault in Denver. The defense allowed a 73-yard touchdown drive, a 70-yard touchdown drive, a 69-yard touchdown drive. That was nice. A 75-yard field goal drive, a 64-yard field drive. We saw this all season. They can't get off the field. They could never get off the field.
That's fair. That's fair, but
the defense just never did enough in the postseason, and that's his specialty. And you have a GM who invested almost all of last year's draft on defense. Too little, too late, maybe, but these are your guys. This is your defense, and it wasn't good enough.
866-4FAN, 866-436. The shocking news today. I don't think anybody else is going to say otherwise. Larry in Penfield. Hey, Larry.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm not surprised that McDermott got fired. I just don't think it's all on his shoulders. I mean, Brandon Beane. I mean, why would you think Coleman? He did not go out and get a top-notch wide receiver to match the 1, 2, or 3 best quarterback in the NFL. I mean, you could have gotten Pickens for a 3rd-round draft pick like the Cowboys did. That kid was on fire this year. You could have got Devontae Adams last year like the Rams did. I mean, he did nothing to help Josh Allen out. I don't understand why all the blame is going on McDermott and not on Brandon Beane. And if you look at the Patriots draft picks over the last couple of years compared to Brandon Beane's draft picks, the Patriots crush what they did compared to what Beane did. And that's a team that we got to face for the next, God knows, 10 years are going to be good. I mean, I don't know, 7, 10 years. This kid's a young quarterback. They're going to be good for a long time. But I don't think that all the, blame lays on McDermott when Beane should be. I would have got rid of both of them. I would put a whole new office in, got rid of both of them.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
You got it.
Thanks,
Again, I don't like the half measure on this either, but I think it is something you're going to hear Beane say a lot of, and whether he says it directly or indirectly, just how much input McDermott had on roster construction. And when you bring up a guy like George Pickens, who we see is productive, but we also know he's a bit of a headache, right? There's a bit of baggage there. There's a bit of extra management and extra time that is given to a player like that. That might be a guy that Sean McDermott said, no, I have no interest in that guy. I don't want that guy in my locker room. He'll poison my culture. We've been through this before. We don't know.
Well, a lot of things we don't know. And I would point to, hey, would you use a receiver in any game, 8 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown? Sure. That's Keelan Coleman, week 1 against the Ravens. What happened after that? Is that part of the equation, too?
I think it is.
Here is somebody that I developed, and not only you're not developing him, you are making him a public example, and we're going in the wrong direction here. Like, maybe there's so much. The only thing I will push back, Larry, that the Patriots had great drafts. Okay, the last 2 years, they're coming off of 4-13 seasons.
You're picking in the top 10.
Yeah, they definitely should have better drafts.
We got to get to Nate Geary. You hear him on the Buffalo Bills radio network. He is stunned, as we all are today, hearing the news that after 9 seasons, Sean McDermott has been let go from the Buffalo Bills. We'll get his thoughts, and we'll talk about what this all means and what it could potentially lead to for the Buffalo Bills. Nate Geary, the Bills radio network, and WGR, our guest next in the Sports Bar.
The surprising news today. After 9 seasons, Sean McDermott fired as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. Brandon Beane gets a promotion to president in addition to being the general manager. Chris Brown says the Bills should be able to bring in someone good as the new head coach.
Inheriting a team with a lot of positive qualities. The major plus is you're a very attractive job because of Josh Allen and what this team has accomplished so far. I would say it's probably Bills and Ravens just by virtue of the fact that you have an MVP quarterback on your roster.
We'll get the thoughts of Nate Gary, Buffalo Bills Radio Network and WGR. He joins us next year in the Sports Bar. In the game heard earlier today here on The Fan, the Amherst lost in Syracuse 3-2 in the shootout. Sabres lost in Carolina today 2-1. College Football National Championship game is tonight. Miami taking on Indiana. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Check in with Nate Gary, the Buffalo Bills Radio Network. And Nate, you were doing your autopsy of the game on Saturday night. We hear Sean McDermott, and McDermott takes a tone that we haven't heard him ever take with the officiating and with everything that went on, and then doubling down with the call to the Buffalo News on the plane ride home. It almost was if it was a guy that knew this was it. His job was on the line. And today we find out Sean McDermott, after 9 seasons, is no longer going to be the head coach of the Buffalo Bills.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a day. You wake up, especially this weekend, right? The way the game ended was much like every other ending to every other season you could imagine. So part of me, especially post-game, I said this like kind of immediately getting on air, and I was kind of like, usually really like to do post-game right after the game because everything's fresh in my mind. I know what I want to be angry about. I know what I want to yell about. But, on Saturday it was nice for me because I had that hour and a half after the game, and I think initially I was really upset about the calls, right? But I think the more I sat on it, the more I was like, man, I did not like how Sean and the players really were all about. I mean, in fairness, I heard Chris Brown talking about this earlier. In fairness, that's what Sean was asked about, so that's what he's going to answer questions about. But, I just look at the opportunities in that game for the Bills to have found ways to win. But I think much like a lot of Sean McDermott's tenure, instead of finding those ways to win, they found ways to lose. And I think it was Adam Schefter that said this morning on Get Up, but there was just this sense that Sean McDermott's teams in the biggest moments looked like they were playing tight. And I think that's probably the best way you could describe sort of in these big moments, guys just not playing freely, playing not to lose. And I think that, there was no 13 seconds moment in this, guys. I'm not looking at this and saying, man, this is another Sean McDermott masterclass in how to lose. Quite the contrary. I thought this was probably the most impressive year that we've seen coaching from Sean McDermott. But I think all in all, from just, from the 30,000-foot view of post-game, I was disappointed that it was so much about that one singular play or, the pass interference penalties, when I think there were opportunities to end this game in regulation. I think the turnovers end up being a big story in this game. And all in all, it's just this is another way the Bills found a way to lose. And I think, unfortunately, that'll be the main reason for me, or the justification that I'll need to say, hey, listen, I think it was time. It's just 8 times you get the chance to win a Super Bowl or go to a Super Bowl with Josh Allen. How many more do you need?
Yeah, it's now that we're looking back, Nate, and with Sean McDermott going, is this just a case of, all right, Terry Pagula waking up Sunday morning and saying it's time, or we're all being detectives now? Even we look at the emotion, which we hadn't seen with the tears and everything. Did that have something to do with it? We listened to some of Sean McDermott's post-game comments or weekly comments talking about Jacoby Myers, let's say, for instance, or you go back to the whole dust-up with Jamarcus Ingram being off the roster. In other words, Nate, is it fair to wonder that Beane and McDermott actually weren't getting along and one of the two had to go here?
I think very real. I tweeted jokingly, but I've got Tim Graham's Twitter on my notifications fired up because if there's going to be an insider that gets the scoop, it's probably going to be Tim. And, I think a lot about, how last season ended, against the Chiefs and the disappointment, I think, of this year not being able to secure the one and seeing New England sort of in 1 year of a rebuild sort of overtake you and win the division and some of those things, right? To me, it's not just about one game. I think it's the disappointment of this season at large. But to me, guys, the story today is the Bills firing Sean McDermott. But to me, the story that I'm going to go in and have some chicken wings here in a bar in Buffalo, and you know what I'm going to talk about with my buddies, guys, is not going to be Sean McDermott. It's going to be the fact that this franchise not only hires Sean McDermott and keeps Brandon Beane, but promotes Brandon Beane. And I think that, to me, is the bigger story because talk about these moments in these games, because all of these games, one-score games, it comes down to a play here, a bounce there, right? And sometimes you can't control the bounce. Just ask the Ravens, right? And last season, how that season ended for them. Ask them about bounces. Obviously, John Harbaugh's gone. So, for me, guys, I'm having a really hard time wrapping my head around. And again, I tweeted this earlier too. It's I don't want to speak for all of Buffalo, maybe. I won't speak for you guys, but everybody that I talked to, there was this sense, not just today, but for the better part of a few years now, where it's I think Sean McDermott's the guy that's closest to the ear of Terry Pagula.
Sure.
He's the guy that if, hey, mom said no, so I'm going to go ask dad sort of thing, right? I have long been under the impression that Sean McDermott hired Brandon Beane. He was the first one hired here. He drafted arguably one of their best drafts, prior to Josh Allen, right, in 2017. I'm very surprised that the revelation that I feel like I found today was that thought process that a lot of my colleagues shared was wrong and maybe wrong the entire time. And I think that revelation, and I would assume, guys, that there is going to be some very difficult questions that Brandon Beane's going to have to answer. And I think the top should be why Sean McDermott's the one falling on the sword and not him.
It's interesting because everything you say, I think we believe, except the people that are watching the game with the owner are up in the box while the head coach is on the field, and they have his ear in that moment. And we know how this game goes, especially with an owner who's made it very clear he just wants to be heard. He just wants to know that, what's going on. He wants to be heard. And when we do hear from Beane, one thing that I'm curious to hear, Nate, and I wonder what your thoughts are on this, how much input do you think Sean McDermott had on this roster? Because you could say Beane is a scapegoat for this roster not being where it should be, but I would say Beane would probably throw it back on the guy that he just fired, saying, no, he wanted a specific kind of player, a specific kind of guy, and with those filters in place, it made my job increasingly difficult to get the talent we need to win these football games.
So I do think that there was input from Sean McDermott, like I think there would be any head coach. But, learning today that Sean McDermott and the staff, the medical staff was reporting directly to Brandon Beane and not to Sean McDermott, I think probably paints the most realistic picture of what the hierarchy was, at least this year. And, I know that if I'm going to point to roster decisions that are likely Sean McDermott influenced, I'm going to look at moves like Tre'Davious White. I'm going to look at moves like bringing Jordan Phillips back. And I'm going to look at moves of some of these retreads. We've all been like, okay, but I think largely that Sean is a guy who trusts who he trusts. And I don't think they were looking to make a great story of Trey White. It just turned out to be that way. But, I've got on pretty good authority that the Joey Bosa move was not a super exciting move for Sean McDermott. And I can tell you Jamarcus Ingram was not a Sean McDermott decision. So while we can sit here and say, well, this guy really controls this part and this guy the other, I think that the general manager of this team controls roster decisions. He makes the draft picks with input from Josh Allen, from input from Sean McDermott. If I were sitting here today, guys, I would tell you Sean McDermott probably has close, if not a little bit more input on the types of players than Josh Allen does. And obviously on a broader scope, not just which wide receiver do you want, Josh, but that sort of input. Like, hey, you're my partner, and I'm going to listen to your input on what this roster needs. But at the end of the day, this is my decision. And I think that's where we are with Brandon. And I'm curious to find out, because the restructuring of management or the front office was mentioned in that PR release from Terry Pagula and the team. And, obviously his promotion, in quotes, to president of football operations. I wonder if that comes with a Brian Gain or a Terrence Gray being moved into the general manager role and a new head coach. And I'll tell you this on this point, guys, too. Like, a little of this is going to depend who the new head coach is. Like, is it Mike McCarthy? Is it Mike Tomlin? If it's an established winning coach, they're probably going to need to allow that coach to have some level of say on who that general manager is, whether it's Brandon Beane. Like, look what happened in New York. In order to get John Harbaugh signed, sealed, and delivered, Joe Shane had to recuse himself from the conversations because he wanted to have a direct line of communication to ownership, not the general manager. So part of this, the promotion to president, is actually a little relieving to me, because what I think that indicates is Terry is now, I think, kind of moving off of football operations entirely and saying, Brandon, you're making all the decisions. And then whether or not you agree Brandon should be making those decisions or not, I would argue it's probably better than Terry having that input on those decisions.
Nate Gary, WGR, our guest here. As yes, we won't hear Nate anymore in the post game or the halftime until next season. Nate, you broke the seal on the new head coaches, and I'm going to be honest, I'm just beginning to wrap my mind around the fact that, we've got to go through the hiring process, and we'll find out who the Bills talk to, and this isn't going to get wrapped up in a bow. I mean, there's somebody in Buffalo reporting right now that the Bills have actually hired Clint Kubiak. Well, that actually would kind of go against the rule. So, again, it's somebody that worked in the media. My question here, Nate, is you are the decision maker. What's the better fit for this Buffalo Bills team? Is it bringing in that guy that has the cachet? And you brought up McCarthy. He did win a Super Bowl in Green Bay, mind you. That's over a decade ago now. Or is it getting the hot shot coordinator that can actually elevate this Bills offense to a place where we all wanted to see? What direction do you think they go here?
Yeah, I mean, talk about, missing the window by a year, though. I mean, Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen, I mean, those guys were, Mike Vrabel, those guys were, last year. And I don't think any of the coaches in this cycle are nearly as decorated or as intriguing as those three names. It's funny, you mentioned seeing a report. My dad calls me today. He's like, hey, I heard Gruden's in town. I'm like, he was just on Barstool this morning trash talking the organization, and they'll get whatever they deserve for firing a great coach. So I doubt it's John Gruden, who also has an active lawsuit against the league. I would say that who they decide to go with, whether there's experience or it's a new hire, is going to say a lot about where Brandon Beane believes he needs to be within the organization. Because if Brandon Beane wants final say on everything, it's not going to be Mike McCarthy. It's not going to be Mike Tomlin. It's not going to be one of these veteran head coaches that are going to come in and want power, which I think limits their field to first-time coaches. I think I'm on leaning, sort of heavily towards the offensive mind, but that comes with a caveat for me. this is no disrespect to Joe Brady, who I think really called probably his best game in as the with the headset on as a Buffalo coordinator on Saturday. It was a masterclass for most of that game. I'm not interested if firing Sean McDermott and hiring his offensive coordinator is your move. Am I going to lose my stuff? I think that is just a huge mistake. If you're looking for a culture change, which the culture is part of the thing that everybody talks about, former players, current players. I think what they need, though, is someone that provides a new vibe, a new quote-unquote culture in these big moments, someone that can free them up a bit. And, I like Clint Kubiak a lot. I think he's a great name. I think he's got the pedigree. And wouldn't it be funny that if, 2 decades or a decade and a half after his dad takes over for John Fox and wins a Super Bowl, he's taking over for Sean McDermott and leads the Bills to a Super Bowl? Man, it'd be pretty poetic for the Kubiak family. But, like, Clint Kubiak, I've hearing the name Davis Webb thrown around, and that's an interesting one, but that's a really ambitious swing for the fences. But that's where I'm at. I wouldn't mind Dable, guys. Dable's an interesting name because I think, unlike Davis Webb, the relationship dynamic is less about friendship and more about respect and kind of the hierarchy of who's got the power. And I think that is what's intriguing about Brian Dable is, Josh really respects Dable and really kind of looks at him as a mentor. And where, Davis Webb is kind of like Josh's best friend. And I don't know about that dynamic, but I think for me, those three names do make a lot of sense to me. And the name that I think everyone is most interested or most maybe intrigued by is Mike McDaniel. And, his name's been thrown around a couple of head coaching jobs and basically every offensive coordinator opening. I might have a tough time, with Bill's ownership and leadership looking at how they absolutely manhandled him in his career as head coach in the division. But, that is, if not the brightest, one of the brightest minds in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball. And it would be, if you could put someone with a lot of experience on the defensive side of the ball, that's not a guy that's going to come in and require power. So I do that's a name, guys, that I'm very interested in exploring further.
Dayball is the one that I keep hearing, and I've got friends who are Giants fans, and when I take their temperature on Dayball, I mean, clearly, there's some recency bias. They don't have many good things to say. Poor game management, questionable game decisions. We saw the Blue 10 incidents through the years, and the list goes on and on. It just doesn't you could say Josh Allen respects him, and I would listen to that as well. But the idea of a first-time head coach, a guy coming here and getting an opportunity to work, even though I guess it's a long way of me asking, Nate, does Josh Allen have to have a say in this, or can this just be Brandon Beane saying, no, this is the guy that we believe is going to get the most out of, not push Josh Allen, but the most out of Josh Allen and get us to where we haven't been able to get?
I think that at the very least, Josh Allen's earned the right to have some input on this. I would also argue, guys, that if Josh Allen was adamant that Sean McDermott needs to be here, then I think he'd be here. And so, for me, I'm looking at this decision as one of the most complex of this cycle. I know, the Ravens is an interesting job opening, but the complexities with the way this organization is set up and the ownership not being a Steve Bisciotti, right, who's in front of the media, who talks to the media constantly. This is a little different here in Buffalo, and how the recency bias of how they lost, and people's inability to maybe get Josh in these big moments. The Bills have had the ball with an opportunity to win the game 3 straight years, guys. 3. 2 of which the ball hits receivers on the hands and they can't come in. They can't figure out a way to bring it in. So, yeah, I think Josh Allen has to be a big part. And if at nothing else, he's earned a right to at least have some level of input. But I think he should have huge levels of input in this because, quite frankly, guys, Josh Allen means more to this organization and is more valuable to this organization than whatever Brandon Beane's input or opinion is.
Is Brandon Beane now kind of viewed as Kevin Adams? I just asked, like, people love Beane when he was doing things. Honestly, like, this feels like a heel turn to me. Like, the idea that he doesn't did he have any response? Is there blood on his hands throughout all this? I think there is, and any anger that is going to come in direction. It used to be the head coach or used to be the owner. Congratulations. It's going to be the new team president who actually gets promoted out of all this.
I mean, he's absolutely got blood in his hands. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. The Keon Coleman pick and the Kyer Elam pick, and he might look at you and say, hey, I picked the players. It's your job to develop them. But, at the same time, right, I mean, Deion Walker, what a player he's turned into. And I do think that, Max Harrison's going to be a heck of a player in this league. But, the drafts are, tainted things a little bit. They're, relying on Brandon Cooks in these big moments. That's not Sean McDermott's fault. So, I think Brandon wears at least as much, if not a little bit more, of the, whatever you want to call what's been going on the last couple of years. Again, this is a highly successful team. They've been to 8 straight playoffs, and, basically they win a playoff game every single year. And so those achievements aren't Sean's exclusively. But I do want to say that, like, this roster was the worst it had been, in the worst shape that it's been. And some of it's due to injuries, and that's not Brandon's fault, right? But I don't know, guys. Like, he absolutely has blood on his hands. And, I'm expecting in this press conference, whether it's tomorrow, Wednesday, whenever it is, that we're going to see a very different and hear a very different Brandon Beane. I think Brandon is smart. I think he understands the current climate, which is when all the fingers are fired and there's only one left, then it's pointed back at you, man. And the target he put on his back by what he did on the station on the morning show earlier this year after the draft, that put the target on his back, but he's the one still standing. So, I think he's smart. I think he's going to know that people are they're upset that Sean ends up being the scapegoat. He's going to have to answer for that, why Sean's the one. But I also think he's going to have to check his ego at the door, because I think he's about to get a lot of difficult questions, and I think all of them will be earned.
I think that if somebody in the Buffalo media doesn't start that press conference by asking, I mean, they're going to ask about McDermott, but you have to ask about the wide receivers. And the wide receiver, position is so interesting to me, because I still think, in my mind, I feel like if there was ever a rift between those two, that rift started with Stephon Diggs. And maybe maybe it escalated when Diggs was dealt and no longer on this roster. Brandon Beane basically saying, okay, well, he's not worth it. He's going to, damage our culture, or he can't get along with the head coach, or whatever it might have been. But, Gene's wife, we call her the executive producer, lovingly said after the Week 5 loss to New England, oh, my God, what's everybody going to say when Stephon Diggs makes it to a Super Bowl before Josh Allen?
That is definitely – listen, I mean, it's hard in a vacuum to look at the Diggs in New England situation and make more of it than what it is. But to watch them pass you, to watch them – you know what? And there is a little pessimistic side of me that's like, man, I'm glad they didn't win and they didn't have to go into New England and lose next week. They would have hurt more to go into New England and potentially lose in the AFC Championship game to Diggs. That's off the table, right? So, part of me, there's a level of relief there. But don't get me wrong, guys. If they go on to a Super Bowl, even if they don't win, I think that a lot of people around here are going to they're going to be in their feelings about watching Stephon Diggs celebrate a chance to go to a Super Bowl just after everything that they went through. And I think largely you're right. I do think that was a move that probably began the fracture of, like, this is – whether you dislike, Diggs as a player, what he was doing on the sidelines or off the field. He was one of their blue chip players, a guy that made their offense go. And I can tell you that Sean McDermott was not a guy that was, pounding the table to take on $70 million in dead cap over 2 years to have this guy play for your division opponent and help them get to a Super Bowl. I can assure you that.
Last one for me, and it's hard for me to wrap my mind around. Like, at some point we're going to see Sean McDermott in different gear. Does he get a head coaching job this cycle, Nate?
Yes. I think if I were Cleveland, I would I'd make him the highest paid head coach in football. And I'd give him control. I just think that ownership group is going to be too meddlesome to convince somebody like Sean McDermott to go there. But like either there or Las Vegas. I mean, those are the two teams that I'd look at it and say, this guy has the proven track record of turning a embarrassing level franchise around in a year. And those are two franchises that desperately need culture change. So yeah, I those two teams make a ton of sense to me. Don't kill the messenger. Don't kill me on this, but wouldn't it make a ton of sense for Baltimore to go with Brady and Sean McDermott? It could make a ton of sense for them. I think it could make a ton of sense for Miami.
Yeah.
As well.
All of these jobs feel like they would make sense. Like the thing that always made me nervous about firing Sean McDermott is, as soon as he's going to lose his job, he's going to have suitors. He's very much like Harbaugh. Like everybody wanted Harbaugh. I think everybody's going to want Sean McDermott.
Yeah, and they'll take staff with him. That's the problem, Nate. Not that I think the new head coach is going to retain Bobby Babich or whoever, but we got to wrap our minds around that. Everything is going to be new next year.
Everything. I agree. I mean, that's how it goes in this league. I would imagine Bobby Babich, and if Joe Brady doesn't get a head coaching job, that he's going to be wherever Sean McDermott is. I think those three, the Dolphins, the Browns, and Las Vegas, and I think Las Vegas is pretty intriguing. Being a team that has Tom Brady there and is going to have the number one overall pick. There's intrigue there. I think if you're a rebuilding franchise, there's probably not a better head coach in this cycle that you could feel like I'm going to bring him in and he's going to help us bring us back to respectability. Will we ever win one? I don't know, but I can tell you that the Raiders and the Browns won't be the laughing stock of the league anymore if that guy's their head coach.
Nate, it's been a roller coaster of a season. It clearly did not end the way any of us wanted, but we were able to count on you to help navigate us through the treachery through the course of the season with all of your appearances here in the sports bar. Man, I do appreciate it. I know we're going to be talking again here through the course of the off season, and there's a lot of drama and a lot of action to come, so I guess everybody stay tuned.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate both of you guys. Thanks for always having me on. I love coming on the show with you guys and yapping and chatting Bills. So, we'll be talking as we get closer to draft time, I'm sure. The old 3-ring binder is going to be getting filled up here pretty soon with draft profiles. So, until then, gentlemen, it's a pleasure as always, and talk to you both soon.
All right, thanks, Nate. Appreciate it, bud.
Hey, Gary.
26, by the way. That's where the Bills pick.
Yeah. Unless they make a move.
Yeah, like, would you trade 26 for Kyle Shanahan? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Shanahan would be awesome. But would I give up a first-round pick? I don't know. Everything is – the thing that's hard to wrap your mind around is everything is going to be different. Cromer's retiring. The
Another clue, right? That should have been a clue right there.
Cromer's retiring. How do you replace that guy? Because he's been great. The offensive line largely has been fantastic for the last few years with Cromer there. I think Brady, if he's not a head coach, he's probably ending up as the OC in Philadelphia. But he could end up as a head coach. Babich, I think, stays with McDermott. I feel like that's a package deal.
Tied for the longest tenured head coach in the AFC East, Mike Vrabel and Aaron Glenn.
Yeah. Vrabel's got him by a couple days, I want to say.
All right, I know we got to get to the break, but no on Mike McDaniel, no on Brian Daboll. I'm sorry. Like, I love Daboll as an offensive coordinator, but just viewing him from afar, I just don't think he's head coaching.
No, if you have to view him from afar. Talk to a Giant fan in your life and ask him about Brian Daboll. It wasn't good. And familiarity with Josh, great. Josh likes him, fine. I don't know that that's what's best for the organization. I really don't know. I don't know that I'm sold on that. You're not alone, by the way. I know that that's a hot name that's getting thrown out there, but I've talked to plenty of Bills fans today. They're like, God, no.
No, that would be the equivalent of, oh my gosh, they're bringing back Jordan Poyer or whatever it is. No, let's kind of look forward.
Right. And the Davis Webb conversation is an interesting one because of the relationship with Josh Allen, because he's so young and unproven
risky,
and raw,
risky, yeah.
high risk, high reward, right? And I would say the same thing about Clint Kubiak. He's got a little bit more under his belt, a little bit more experience. The thing that stinks about both of these guys is the Bills can't even talk to him until February, right? Like, you've got a window to be able to talk to him, and it's not anytime soon.
Well, the one thing, I mentioned this in the interview with Nate, I feel like I have to clarify. A guy named Bob Koshinsky, he used to run Empire Sports Network before that went belly up, a TVE guy, and he put on Facebook that the Buffalo Bills are hiring Clint Kubiak. I'm like, oh, okay, so we're just going to kind of pass right by the Rooney Rule and everything else. Okay,
yeah. And we're going to – do you give his sources on that? Does he have an insight?
The source is him. Yeah, he heard from somebody.
Oh, he heard it from somebody.
Oh, okay, this is – yeah, again.
Okay.
Trust, they're not hiring anybody tomorrow.
Yeah. Lots to pay attention to over the course of the next few days, though. When we hear from Brandon Beane, I think it's going to be very interesting. It's like I don't hear enough people, talking about Brandon Beane. If McDermott is requesting a certain type of defensive player, a certain type of player that fits a mold for defensive roster decisions, for the offense, whatever it might be, then Beane, by listening to his head coach, is, how involved was McDermott in those roster decisions? We're critical of the guy for putting out the roster that he did, but how involved, and this is what I think we're going to hear a lot of through the offseason, was just how involved McDermott was in the construction and development of this roster, and that we didn't see guys develop the way we wanted them to.
Well, it's really easy to blame and scapegoat the guy who's not here.
Yeah.
That's page 1 of the playbook.
And if you're McDermott, and for years, every year when the season would end this way, we would say, all right, who's McDermott going to scapegoat this year? Who do you have this year? We were struggling with that. Like, if it were going to end badly, we were pointing at Brandon Beane. Brandon Beane's going to be the scapegoat. It's got to be Brandon Beane. Brandon Beane didn't put together this roster.
You put it like Sean McDermott is not sitting in the box every game with Terry Pegula. The GM isn't. Here we are again. Oh, gosh, and it's another playoff loss. And, okay, what are we going to do that's different here? 866-4FAN happy hour. By the way, we they did this on One Bills Live. Normally on Mondays they do a review. They're like, no. Just kind of blowing up the fire. So come up in the 5 o'clock hour, we do shots. I don't think anybody.
No,
not today. Not today. So it's just going to be exclusively your calls, opinions. What angles are we missing?
We want to hear from you.
Yeah,
we want to hear from you. It's one thing to lose the way they lost on Saturday, and we knew we were going to come in here today and play the blame assessment game. I don't think we had Sean McDermott losing his job today on our bingo card coming back in from a holiday weekend.
Does that say something about us?
Absolutely.
That we and I like Nate said,
lump everybody in.
Lump everybody in. I got to hold myself accountable.
Everybody in the blast zone believed that McDermott had the relationship with Pegula that was ironclad. That this guy had done enough over the course of his 9 seasons, helped the team build a stadium during this regime, and today he's out of job. I mean, the human element of me feels horrible for Sean McDermott and his family today. I really do. And we've been critical, and I've been critical, but this season, I have not been critical of Sean McDermott.
Can I just say this? I hope he goes somewhere and wins a Super Bowl.
Oh, my God.
Tony Dungy did that with the Colts. If you think it's bad that Diggs is going to win a Super Bowl, what if McDermott goes somewhere else and builds everything else? Hey, you brought up the Raiders. We're gonna watch this kid tonight, and it's a little divisive. Not everybody is completely.
Is there something happening tonight? I don't know. It feels like everything's been overshadowed.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There were hockey games today. There's basketball games going on right now.
No, we're going to talk about what you want to talk about. The Bills moving on from Sean McDermott after 9 seasons. Your thoughts on the end of this season and what's ahead for the Buffalo Bills. Join us on the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line at 585-866-4FAN, 866-4326. Award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub at 135 West Commercial Street in East Rochester. GoodSmokeBBQ.com.
surprising news out of Buffalo today. After 9 seasons, Sean McDermott is out as head coach. Brandon Beane gets a promotion to president. Chris Brown says this came from the top.
And it was clear in Terry Pegula's statement that he was appreciative of everything that Sean brought to the organization. But clearly he feels this team has been unable to clear a particular hurdle under Sean McDermott in the postseason. And he believes changing the head coach can change the course of the team in the postseason.
One place McDermott will not go to, that's Miami. The Dolphins today hiring Jeff Hafley as the new head coach. Hafley, formerly the Packers defensive coordinator. Earlier today, the Amerks losing in Syracuse 3-2 in the shootout. The Sabres fell in Carolina 2-1. College football's national championship game is tonight, Miami and Indiana. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, the Fan, Rochester.
Martin Luther King Day 2026. You could say that this will be remembered as a transformative day in the history of the Buffalo Bills. After 9 seasons, the team has relieved Sean McDermott of his responsibilities as head coach.
All right, is it fair to say that this is one of those moments where when you heard the news, you knew where you were? I'm not going to go as far to say who was the Sean O'Hara one time said when Tom Brady retired. You know where you were. It's like 9/11. It's like wait, no, stop. Don't ever say anything like that.
You remember it.
This is a huge moment, not just for Tom Brady, not just for the NFL, but like for all of us. You know, look, people remember where they were when JFK was assassinated. You remember where you were with 9/11.
Can I tell you something? Can I interrupt you real quick? His first start was a week after 9/11. That's how long ago he's been playing.
I came out the same year as him, 2000, and he's still playing. 23 years. That's a long time. But I'm going to remember this. Like, I'm going to remember who I'm with. Kyle's going to remember he was in Vegas. You're going to remember where you were when Tom Brady announced his official retirement. And it sounds like this one's for real.
It's funny. And Schrager. We'll always appreciate that clip because Schrager jumped in like,
oh, no, where's this going? No.
Try to throw him a life preserver. Yeah. But as this news was breaking, if you've seen some of the reaction footage to the Schefters or the Ian Rappaports when they got this news, like they're in the middle of their shows and they had to like excuse themselves to confirm that this was actually happening.
So the NFL Network on Good Morning Football, it's like they know something and they're getting excited. And then Rappaport comes in, and he's got to give a different tone. Like, hey, this is a well-respected person that just got fired. And then for Schefter, it was Greeny is running this, and he's not getting any confirmation, but he sees the confirmation on his phone.
Yeah.
So his producer hasn't given him the golden gleam. But in this day and age, you got to get it out there. So as soon as you know, and Greeny's like, yeah, Sean McDermott. Pretty wild stuff.
I was trying to be an adult. I was sitting by the fire, drinking my morning coffee, knowing that today was kind of a relaxed day. It's Martin Luther King. It's a company holiday. We were going to come in and do a show regardless because the Bills played on Saturday. It didn't go the way we wanted, but we knew we were going to be in here after Amerks hockey this afternoon. And, Gene, I'm still rubbing the sleep out of my eyes when I look at my phone, and I'm like, whoa, Schefter's reporting that the Bills are firing head coach Sean McDermott? Oh, my God. Is this real? Like, you have to do a double check, right? Check your sources. I'm like, well, we were wrong. We were wrong.
Yeah,
so we thought he was safe.
Totally
Always
wrong.
thought he was safe. And, again, in the world of aliens, billionaire owners, they're in their bubble. They're in their vacuum. And if you can influence them while in their atmosphere, that's your best chance, right? And for as much respect that I believe Terry Pegula probably has for Sean McDermott, the human element in me hates that Sean McDermott is never going to coach a game in the stadium that he was a part of building.
The human element, like, this isn't the way the story's supposed to go. Hey, they lose to Denver. It's another, let me censor myself, another SE ending. Another GDF, blah, blah, blah,
yeah.
blah. Oh, okay, but we know the cycle. We'll just pick ourselves up, we'll dust ourselves off, and we
Run
get
it
back
back
to fishing,
and get
run it back.
disappointed
Well,
again.
at least, but someday they were going to break through.
That's the
That's
optimistic
a whole.
view.
That's yes. And then there would be Allen and McDermott, and now that is not the story.
You have a general manager and a COO who share a booth with the owner every game. And at what point does it just boil over? At what point do they just say, you know what, enough? Enough is enough.
Well, at what point did McDermott know this isn't going to go my way? When you hear him, remember, mind you, he's on the competition committee.
Yeah.
Call up Jay Skersey and just put the whole process on blast. I'm thinking, oh, man, he is going to get a hefty fine. Well, if he coaches somewhere else, he'll probably still get fined.
I like the idea after a horrible loss, any horrible loss, the idea of accountability, the idea of it starts with me. Even if it's just empty words, you're saying it, and I do think that you believe that. But for him to go out of character the way he did and go right to the call, right to the botched call.
I'm fighting for Buffalo.
That, to me, I'm like, he's speaking the language of losers. Something is up. That is way out of character for Sean McDermott. He's never done that before. And he probably knew. He probably knew. Yeah. This is me fighting for my job. I'm doing it for Buffalo.
This is not my fault. This is the officials' fault.
I'm pandering. Yep. He was pandering in that moment to the Bills fan who, every time there's a bad loss, wants his ass on a platter. And it was so out of character for him. I was stunned by it. I'm like, this is a brilliant performance by a drama major. This is a brilliant performance. He is doing something he's never done before.
Again, I don't have any problem with that because you know what? I'm part of the audience here, and so are you if you're listening. Like, my gosh. Like, that's the way this is going to end after a game where you played poorly, but yet you should have won the game. 866-4FAN, 866-4326. We have people that have been patient.
You should not win a game when you turn the ball over 5 times. I'm going to just say that. You should not.
4 times. That last one shouldn't have counted. Will you at least give me that? Will you at least give me that?
5 turnovers for the game.
4 and an asterisk.
Okay.
Make me feel better. JP in Rochester. Hey, JP, how are you?
Good, guys. How you doing?
Yeah. JP, we're good. How are you?
Yes. A couple things. I'll make it real quick, but like you guys seeing the news this morning, was pretty shocked. Obviously not very cool move to let go of coaches, but, he had a great relationship with the players, seemed like a great leader, and, at times it's been a love-hate relationship with McDermott, but he's been a rock for us. At the same time, he does have some pretty inexcusable mistakes. Obviously, 13 seconds, everybody knows that. Completely unacceptable. But even this year, looking at the game, Savage and I forgot who else it was, went out there for a play. Dane Jackson got torched for a touchdown. Dude, we're playing Maxwell Harrison up 35-0 against the Jets. Dude, throw Reed Ferguson at corner. Like, you need your first-round pick out there.
Yeah.
But I think even more inexcusable is Bean staying around. I mean, look at the weapons we're throwing to a 32-year-old Brandon Cooks. And the amount of capital that's been poured into this defensive line, and we don't have one sack. I mean, we're relying on Joey Bosa at this age in his career. What are we doing?
JP, I agree with the idea that a half measure here probably doesn't solve the problem. But we'll see. I'll reserve judgment because I don't know how much input Sean McDermott had into the roster construction when working with Brandon Bean. To your point on Savage and on Jackson getting torched, I put that on Sean Payton. That's just next level, Hall of Fame level coaching right there, saying and recognizing they've got a weakness and we're going to go right after that weakness and exploit it. And they did in both cases.
You know what? We're so far beyond who should have played safety in this game, right? It's like
Cam Lewis is out for one play.
One play.
Darnell Savage goes out there and Sean Payton targets him.
Why wasn't it Hancock? Like that Savage go
whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that is no pun. That is savagery by Sean Payton. He just knew. Like, oh, look who's in the game now. Dane Jackson, who can't cover. Let's go right after him. That is expert level coaching.
866-4FAN. People waiting patiently. JP in Rochester.
So we got to JP already.
Yeah, but no, Tom in Irondequoit. Hey, Tom.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, Tom.
Before I get to my Bills take, I wanted to let you know how bad of a sports day it was Saturday for Western New York, Buffalo, Central New York, Rochester. Do you realize that the RIT men's hockey lost in overtime?
Are you kidding?
I
I called the game. Do you know how weird it is to call a game while you're watching Bills football? I shouldn't say that, but go on. It was terrible.
Orange lost in overtime.
The Orange losing to BC in overtime.
Terrible.
The Orange
Terrible.
just giving away a game
Buffalo
to
Sabres
BC.
lost in overtime.
Yeah. They lost to the Wild.
RIT women lost. The Nazareth hockey lost. The New York Knicks lost. The Nighthawks
lost.
Avoided overtime by a minute after having a 6-2 halftime lead, losing 11-10 on a goal with 57 seconds left.
Do we want to lump in the Amerks losing on Friday and Sunday?
That was the other one, too.
Yeah.
So, Black Saturday, but now to the Bills. If the thing with the Waddle trade was true, then Bean needs to be fired, not McDermott. I think McDermott did the most with the least coaching this year of all his years.
Yep.
And the only loss I blame him for is 13 seconds. And I'm not John the Optimist. I'm Tom the Pessimist. I think the closest the Bills got was that 13 seconds game.
Yep.
And they're not going to ever get any closer.
Yeah. Tom, it's funny you say that. We had Maggie Gray on with us a couple of years ago, and she brought that exact same point up that, the harsh reality for Bills fans is that 13 seconds might have been as good as it's going to get, as close as we were going to get.
It was like,
and when she said that, it's chilling. Again, we here locally are so close to it that we sometimes don't have the clearest view. And sometimes the clearest view is from 30,000 feet, and somebody like Maggie or any of the other national people could have seen this coming from a mile away. Like, they're not surprised today. This was overdue. How could you have held on to this guy through so many postseason failures? How could you hold on to a guy for the last 6 years and last 6 playoff losses had a defense that gave up over 33 points per game? But we thought he was safe as a kitten.
Tom, good call. Appreciate that at 866-4FAN. It's one of those rare times I say, with Tom dropping off, that opens up a line for you. Stuart in Rochester. Hey, Stuart, welcome.
Thank you. Parallels between the Yankees and the Bills. They both have the big superstars, Judge, of course, and Josh, both under a lot of pressure. Do you remember when Judge dropped that ball in center field and got blamed, in the World Series? It's kind of similar, when Josh has a bad game, because they're both the top players for the teams.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's I always thought the Yankees, as long as they're making money and people are subscribing, everything's going to be just fine. With their history, do they really need anything? This is different. Like, we're all different here, right? If the Yankees win, hey, that's great. At some point, they're going to win again. And I put this out there, and sometimes, tweets get caught up in the algorithm. This one went off, and I just said I didn't have much to say on Saturday other than this. Please, for my father and for everybody else, knowing that time is not an infinite supply. On this planet, it just isn't. Just once.
One before I die, right?
Not even for me.
Right.
Not for me.
Right.
For everyone.
Yeah.
That's name me. You can't, by the way. Name me the team and the fan base that has been put through so much in their history in terms of, here it is. Oh, sorry. That's not it. You can't.
Cubs, I think, until 2016. You could have made that case.
And that's why I was very happy.
Yeah.
Very happy.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Red Sox.
Sure. Yeah, it's tough. And it's a move that for people that were kind of clamoring for this for a while, you got your wish. But I always say be careful what you wish for. Because it's a guy that through 9 seasons did a lot of things right. and handled himself and the organization with class, built a culture, changed a culture. I mean, the drought feels like forever ago. The drought feels like forever ago.
Right.
And it was so bad. It was so bad. Remember how bad it was? It was so bad. And this guy comes in that nobody knew. Nobody had heard of. It was like, oh, yeah, billionaire owner hiring a cheap first-time head coach. Let's see what this guy does.
From Carolina.
From Carolina, yeah. Oh, yeah, right. And, they keep Whaley around, and you're like, okay, what really? Like, what are we doing with this guy, Whaley? I wasn't privy to the Rex, right? Okay, good. Okay, so this is a mess. The whole thing is a mess. But you got a new head coach, and let's see. And then they bring in they fire Whaley, they bring in his guy. And then you see them break the drought in the first year. And you're like, God, maybe he's a good coach. Jeez, they're buying into it. And all of the former players, whether you want to talk about Eric Wood or Mitch Morse, they're all like, this is shocking and devastating. He's a great man, a great head coach.
Even guys that I don't think he was going to be on the roster next year, but Jordan Phillips, there's a lot of, you don't see this that often, people commenting on either their current or former head coach.
I also think it's guys recognizing that this coach maybe gave them shots that other people wouldn't give them. Jordan Phillips is probably not on an NFL roster if not for Sean McDermott. What's Taron Johnson at this stage of his career if not for Sean McDermott? Guys that are being outspoken about Sean McDermott. And Deion Dawkins. I mean, this is a guy that Sean McDermott drafted and a guy that they've been together. He's got a year on Josh, right? Like, it's a tough day for those guys. I think that's partially why they were as emotional as they were. They knew. They had to know that this was the end.
And that was, to me, that was a Hail Mary by McDermott getting up at the podium and going out of character and pointing at the officiating. And then when he realized, you know what, I really got to deliver the point the way I want to, calls up the senior member of the press corps from the team playing. Really, like when you're the competition committee, that is a finable offense. But when he's trying to do everything he can to save his job last second, if he knows. Today, normally we're like around 5:30 Eastern time, we'll say, hey, here are the other headline stories. We call it shots. Not doing that today. We're taking your calls. Brad in Rochester. Hey, Brad.
Hey, you know what? I'm hoping, and I got to hope beyond hope, that this turns out like what happens with Elway and with Manning, that a change of coach gets him to the promised land. That's what I have to look at it for. I love McDermott. I love what he's done. But we got to get a coach to get us to the promised land. And that's probably one of the big reasons, besides him and McDermott, him and Bean being at odds about things, Darius Slay, who wasn't picked up, who was picked up, that it just came to a head. And Bean had a better ear on Pegula than McDermott did. McDermott didn't lose the locker room. He didn't lose anybody. He had more people wanting to come back to Buffalo and play than probably any other place in the league.
Correct.
But yet he lost out in a power struggle. That's the best way I can see it. Only way I can see it.
Well, Brad, I also will say, and we haven't spent a ton of time talking about this, but I don't know that the Buffalo Bills make a seismic move like this without knowing who they're going to get in return, because they know whoever we get has to be better than what we had, has to be able to command a room of alphas, has to be able to not give away a lead or squander a quarterback for another season, not choke in the postseason, not give up more points. You know, whoever that guy is, they've got to have somebody already in mind.
Without question. Without question. You could present a theory that Terry Pegula got up and he's the owner and impulsively did this. I don't think that's the case at all. If anything, if there is a rift between McDermott and Bean, yes, we picked up some signals or clues along the way, but this wasn't like Whaley and Rex at the end where, you know, the two guys openly disliked each other and you're both gone. That's my question today. All right, you made the move on McDermott, but then are you really changing things if Brandon Bean stays? I don't know. Chris, waiting patiently in Rochester. Hey, Chris.
How we doing, guys? Big time fans. I want to talk about the next possible coach for the Buffalo Bills.
Sure.
If you give me an opportunity, I'm telling you, if you really want to keep that culture but change the defense, Robert Saleh is our guy. Who can really give you that kind of thing? Who's been in the division, who got a bad rep in with the Jets, and I think he's one of the guy who can keep that culture going. What do you think about that?
Wow. That's well, you know what? I appreciate the different viewpoint because I think in terms of what he did in San Francisco this year, outstanding. What he's done in the past, outstanding. You'd have to explain what happened down in New York.
Well, I think he's a product of what happened in New York.
Yeah.
But I will also say I'm also a believer that some guys are not meant to be a head coach. Some guys are better suited as a coordinator. And I'll put Brian Daboll in that category. I will put Robert Saleh in that category. When you see Saleh with the Niners, the reason why that defense plays the way it plays for him, he's able to do things that a head coach can't do. He's more animated. He's more fired up. He's more in their grill. You don't see head coaches doing that. When you do, you kind of like, oh, what's he doing? Like when Daboll got into Tyrod, that Bills game, right? Remember the Giants and the Bills and Tyrod's coming, and we're like, what? That's not what a head coach should do in public. Behind closed doors, maybe, but I don't know that I see Saleh as a guy who could be the head coach. I don't know. I wouldn't hate it, but I don't know if he's better served. I think he's better served a defensive mind.
No, the thing that I'm kind of warming up to, Kubiak or Davis Webb, but tell me about the rest of your staff. And when you're bringing in young guys like this, how do you round that out? If you say, well, just bring back Bobby Babich, what? You understand, Bobby Babich was running the Sean McDermott defense. And if you're running the Sean McDermott defense, the thing you need to kind of move off of is Sean McDermott. Like, that's going to be, like, to me, like a lot of the McDermott guys in this locker room, your Jordan Phillips and everything, but that's also going to be true for the coaches. To me, if I said right now, I don't think anybody's back. You could say, well, bring in Robert Saleh and you keep Joe Brady. I think that's a long shot at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think Brady's going to have options, if not as a head coach, but certainly as an OC somewhere else. I know he was interviewed for head coach in Philadelphia before they hired Sirianni.
Brady was interviewed in Baltimore, but now you brought up, like, what if McDermott lands in Baltimore and brings Brady with him? Like, that's where we have to think. Like, McDermott, wherever he lands up, and he will. He's, it's already been kind of reported that he wants to keep coaching.
Well, I would say in Baltimore, bringing in McDermott feels like a lateral move for them because you're bringing in a guy that just got fired for the same reasons why you fired your last coach. If you need McDermott to change, if your team needs a culture change, McDermott's your guy.
Cleveland, Arizona,
right.
Vegas.
Yes.
Tennessee.
Yes. We know. We've seen it. We know firsthand what he is capable of in terms of changing a culture. It's the big moments. The big moments are the things that killed Sean McDermott. The moments where you got to have it. The big games where you got to have it.
He's Marty Schottenheimer.
Yeah.
Like honestly, like it gets too tight in a big moment.
We talked about, we dubbed him McSchottenheimer last year. The thing that I think you have to make this move now because you don't want Josh Allen to be Phillip Rivers. And right now, that's kind of who you have. You have Chargers era Phillip Rivers as your quarterback. Great quarterback. And at times looks like the best quarterback in the league. But
that was, okay, Cincinnati the Denver game was terrible. By far and away his worst game of the season. But ultimately, the coach didn't have him ready to go. The coach didn't say, hey, there's nothing to be accomplished here at the end of the first half. Take a damn knee. There were coaching mistakes there in that game, too, that you just can't look past. We all focused on the end of the game, how we got screwed. But
the end of the first half was comical. Comically bad.
That's an interesting word. Like, if it's another team, I'm laughing my ass off. If you're a Bills fan, you're furious.
It's comically bad.
Furious.
And, ultimately the difference in the game, 3 points. We got to take a break. We will come back. We do have time for more of your calls. We're going to break format. We're not going to do shots next. We're going to listen to you and get your thoughts on the Bills' change of heart here with Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott, after 9 seasons, has been let go as head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And we want to hear from you on it. The loss on Saturday, the McDermott firing, what's ahead for this team, 866-4FAN is our phone number. 585-866-4326. More next on The Fan.
Coach, one place McDermott will not go to, that's Miami, by the way. The Dolphins hiring Jeff Hafley, the Packers defensive coordinator, as their new head coach. Chris Brown with more on the move.
You're inheriting a team with a lot of positive qualities. The major plus is you're a very attractive job because of Josh Allen and what this team has accomplished so far. I would say it's probably Bills and Ravens, just by virtue of the fact that you have an MVP quarterback on your roster.
In a game heard earlier today on the Fan, the Amherst losing in Syracuse 3-2 in the shootout. A season-long 6-game homestand begins Friday night for Rochester. Sabres lost in Carolina today 2-1. College football's national championship game is tonight, Miami and Indiana. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Sean McDermott has just put out a statement, and as far as I can tell, there aren't any typos in the first line.
Well, yeah, when the Bills put out their statement that Sean McDermott had done an admiral, like I'm an admiral on a ship, or the Milwaukee Admirals, if you're a minor league hockey fan. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's he's thanking the Pegula family. He's thanking Bills Mafia. He's just being classy.
He's saying all the right things. I mean, he's just completely classy, and the guy off the field might be one of the greatest humans you could spend time around because he's inspirational and he does it a certain way, and he's disciplined, and he's got his belief and his faith and everything that he brings to the table. You have a hard time being critical of Sean McDermott, the man, the father, the husband, from what we know. And this statement is fantastic. I'm not going to read it all now, but you'll see it cross your feed. Take a second and read it, because I do think it is a portrait of a guy who doesn't take anything for granted and viewed every opportunity as a gift. And if we all took our lives that way, if we all dealt with our lives that way, I think we'd be in a better place.
We have time for your calls, 866-4FAN, 866-4326, as it has been a certainly busy day. For me, the shock has not worn off. I'm sure it hasn't worn off for you. Mike in Rochester joining us. Hi, Mike.
Hey, guys. As a Jets fan and a Sabres fan, I think you've got to get rid of Brandon Beane alongside McDermott, because he saw at week 8 all 3 of his rivals have a losing record and didn't do anything. And the Jets gave up players that should have been on the Bills to help this roster. I think the Bills just got to get rid of the culture of having blue-collar guys the same way the Sabres had the problem for 20 years of having, we've got blue-collar guys who do a really good job. It's like, but get stars. Get actual quality players who, when you get to the playoffs, step up. Because if Josh Allen's the only guy that's got to step up, he's got to be Superman. He makes errors. You need more players who can step up when you get to these playoffs, and that's a problem from Brandon Beane.
It's so funny how quickly Brandon Beane has turned heel. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. But everybody, I mean, for so many years, Beane this, Beane that, Beane did it. Wow. Big balls Beane, big baller Beane. We love Beane. And now this guy isn't getting good.
Well,
the arrogance of this guy. And here's the thing, like you mentioned it, Mike, the idea that Beane is getting a certain type of player. I don't know how influential the aforementioned Sean McDermott was in Beane getting that certain type of player, because it fits our culture. And to Mike's point, the talented guys sometimes might take a little bit more managing.
I don't think Sean McDermott had anything to do, though, with giving Curtis Samuel and Josh Palmer money and missed draft picks, which will happen to every team. But I will say this, and this is the part that's kind of off-putting there. With the Baltimore Ravens, owner says, hey, you know what, the OC doesn't get along with Lamar, fire the OC. And John Harbaug's like, no. Okay, then you're fired too. The idea that Sean McDermott brought in Brandon Beane, recruited Brandon Beane, and now time has passed 9 years later, and I'm in now the position where I'm in and you're out.
I feel like I should play the Godfather theme or something here, Gino.
Well,
but
right.
the structure, as it was set up by Terry Pegula, was an interesting one. For the entirety of the 9 years that they worked together, they each reported directly to Terry Pegula. Today, that structure changes. Now, as president of football operations and general manager, Brandon Beane will be the sole voice going to Terry Pegula. It won't be a head coach having that dialogue, as far as we know,
with the
owner. So that's different. And I'll go back to, as much as they might like McDermott and they might have loved McDermott through all these years, if you're in that box with Terry Pegula and you're Brandon Beane, you're Pete Goelli, and you have to live through this every year, like, my God, it's got to be painful, gut-wrenching. We all feel it as fans. The billionaire owner probably has had enough. He's probably just had enough. What are we going to do? We've run out of scapegoats. Who's left? It's Sean McDermott.
And probably he knew this.
Yeah.
Probably he knew this.
Had a sense. Yeah. Had to have had a sense. But yeah, the statement is classy. You can wonder now and start to speculate. He wants to coach. Where will he go? I think he's probably been vaulted with Stefanski ending up in Atlanta and Harbaugh going to the Giants. I would think that McDermott would vault to the top of the coaching candidate list for a lot of teams. And we'll see. And as far as the Bills go, I don't think you make this move without knowing, before you make this move, we've got our guy. We know how we're going to get him in here, and we know how we're going to be better next year.
Tomorrow, more your calls. One more today. James in Rochester. Hey, James, what's up, bud?
Hey, so just a couple of quick points. I think Brandon Beane lost a lot of his fans at two different points. It was the final straw. It was going up against Jeremy from WGR and the whole wide receiver bit, and then coming back with the rumors about Waddle and not giving up next year's first-round pick. I think that kind of turned the tide on a lot of fans against Beane. But in terms of McDermott, I mean, probably the wrong situation, but the right move ultimately. I just think, we're not going to see a defensive guy come in. It's going to be, it's going to be an offensive coach.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. We're out of time. Apologize.
I don't disagree with what he's saying. I think the arrogance that he showed when he was on that hit with Jeremy and Joe was the first strike. I think a lot of people started to like, wow, really? This guy's got an ego and an arrogance about him. He doesn't see what we see, which is they need help. And by the way, Jeremy and Joe, you were right. You were right.
You were right.
We're back tomorrow. Matt Perino joins us. Mike Leone joins us.
Yeah.
Michael F. Floria joins us. Stories just beginning. We're going to keep talking about it. Bet MGM tonight next on The Fan.